Everybody, welcome back to another episode one of these years. Off season rolling on here as we are in OTA period number, I don't know, 2. It's about to be number 3 by the time you probably listen to this. I'm Nick Baumgardner along with Colton Pouncy. Colton, how we doing? I went out there last week. I did not go out there this week. I got sunburnt immediately last week. I forgot. I always do this. Every year I go out there in May like this, and I forget that turf, just like the sun hits that turf, man, and on those like really sunny days, and it just, boom, it just goes right back up. Happens every time. Anyway, I wasn't out there this week. You were, but we'll talk about some stuff today. How are we doing?
Good. I am not afraid of the sun, unlike you.
I know. You're doing all right.
Yeah. We were out there on Thursday for the second open practice of OTAs. Right. Honestly, haven't been like too eventful. I mean, it's just guys running around in shorts this time of year, but there are a few things that you can kind of take away from this period. So, yeah, second one. They have another one. Actually, they have mini camp next week. So that's June 3rd through the 5th. Right. And all 3 of those days are open. So we'll have that. And they wrap up with their last open media session, I think, June 10th. So that'll be the plan.
Mini camp is a little bit more intense in terms of one-on-ones, not with pads, but in terms of one-on-ones with the skill guys. Like they'll and 7-on-7 and stuff like that. That you'll see more competition, I guess, is what I would say. Mini camp, because it's mandatory. Everybody has to be there. Not that everybody isn't really there who needs to be there right now. But I think that the main thing I took away from the first time out there, and then again from reading the stuff from yesterday or this week, is that they have so much time for the young guys to get reps. Like, it's just overwhelming almost to a degree. Like, Campbell joked that first week about all the guys that were doubtful to probable or whatever it was, or whatever he said
for week 1. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's basically like any veteran with like a scratch on his body is like, you're not doing anything until, except there's a couple out there still, but most of the veterans aren't doing anything. And when I say veteran, I mean anybody who's played one season or whatever, and you're not doing anything, which gives time for a lot of these young guys. Like, we've seen a ton of young guys get some time, which has been good. I'm sure that happened again yesterday as well. You see a lot of young guys that we're going to see more of, as time goes on here.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, even yesterday, I think Carlton Davis kind of sat out. I saw him wearing like just a hoodie and street clothes, so he seems fine. It was probably just a rest day. That allowed Terry and Arnold to get in there and get some like meaningful reps, and I think he's spending most of the day with the first team defense. They're kind of banged up there, just a little bit. Letting some guys rest, so they have Amik Robertson kind of playing in that slot nickel position with Brian Branch out. I think Kendall Vildor is like the other corner that's getting a lot of reps. Yeah. So they're letting these guys get some reps, I think it's really good for a guy like Arnold. He had a play where he picked off Jared Goff in a late game situation. Yeah, that was cool.
I didn't know. Okay. I didn't know that.
So here's what I don't know the exact scenario. I want to say there's like a minute 19 left on the clock.
Yeah.
I think 14-14 game. Lions offense has the ball. They're trying to march down and score. And on the very first play, Goff kind of, targets JMO on the sideline. And honestly, like, Arnold just made a really good play on the ball. He kind of like, they got there at the same time. Arnold just kind of ripped it out of JMO's hands. It wasn't that, I don't want this to be an anti-JMO, anti-Goff thing.
Yeah, look, that's what Terrion does.
It was just the rookie making plays, right? That's better than the alternative. The rookie's first-round picks getting cooked out there. You don't want that.
Yeah, Okuda,
but he's making plays,
that, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, never. Okay, that did not happen. We were waiting days to see his first pass break up. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's what I remember from his early camp. So, yeah, man, he's a competitive dude. So is Rakestraw. I think everything on field is about what you would expect. There were some stuff off the field that we want to talk about or touch on at least today, and we'll work back to some of the practice stuff. But we want to start with Ben Johnson, who spoke. Aaron Glenn spoke last week, and I think they put Ben Johnson and Dave Phipp last week too. Ben came out here this week. I'm not sure what they're going to do after this. But Ben Johnson with his offseason address here, I guess. First time he's talked locally anyway, since season ended?
Yeah.
Was he at the Combine?
He didn't talk to us at the Combine.
Okay,
so I'm sure he was there. But
first time he's talked to him, we'll say, since the season ended. And right after the season ended, as we know, we went on those interviews and, everything that was written about that. Colton, you were there. Sort of walk me through all the things that were sort of asked, and it's a super unique situation. He's a really, really unique guy. I really like talking about him because it's different. But you were there. Walk me through kind of what happened there yesterday with Ben.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of probably knew he was going to get a lot of questions.
Oh yeah, right, exactly.
But it's funny because by the end of the session, someone asked him a football question. He's like, "Thank God, a football question, finally."
Yeah, right.
After we peppered him with like 15. But yeah, I mean, you kind of knew what was coming. Like this was going to be his first chance to talk about what went down. Specifically with Washington. They're on a plane to Detroit to interview him at the end of the season. I believe he sent a text is the story that like, "Hey, thanks, but no thanks. Like I'm happy here." And that pissed a lot of people off over there in Washington, over there in DC, man. Like
right. We heard that very
some
clear.
of the fallout from that was very weird and odd.
Yeah.
Like a bitter, I don't know, guy that got rejected. That's kind of the vibes that were coming out there. But
Yes.
anyway,
Like this doesn't happen, this shouldn't happen kind of thing. And it's like,
yeah.
well, maybe it should happen. But
And
anyway,
like
go ahead.
my thing was like, if you're Washington and you're trying to prove to everyone that, oh, this isn't the same old, Washington organization, we're different, we got new ownership, and you're just like pouting to everyone that will listen about
I know.
why you didn't get your guy and like, all this other stuff, trying to like drag him through the mud. Oh, that was kind of weak. I don't really think that helps the image that you're trying to change a little bit, but that's just me. But anyway, back to Ben Johnson, he was asked, when did you know you were going to stay? And he mentioned on the plane ride back to Detroit after that NFC Championship loss in San Francisco, he remembered a speech by Dan Campbell. I think he said 2021. So he went back, a couple of years there. And just the analogy he made, like we're going through some rough waters right now. We're in the Arctic, we're hitting icebergs. We're what were they? They start off like 10-1 or something like that.
Well, yeah, we talked to him about maybe they'll go winless like on week 5, and he was like, "Y'all need to shut up. I don't want to hear that." Like, and we're like, "Sorry, this is Detroit." Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So
that's how bad it was.
They got to that winless start that year, and I guess during that time, Campbell's message was consistent, and like that's kind of how we know him to be. He's always going to have that even kill mindset, even when things aren't going their way. But he made that analogy like we just got to get through the storm. The Caribbean's ahead of us. We can see sunlight. This is going to pass. Like we'll be just fine. And Johnson sitting on the plane, he's singing back to that moment, that speech, that analogy. And he realized, hey, we're in the sunshine right now. Like we are so far removed from what we once were. We're in calm waters. We got a good thing going here. Why leave? And that was kind of when it hit him. Like, I need to stay here. I need to kind of see this through. He's a guy. I think he had only made the playoffs one other time in his career before last year. So he had been in those waters like for a while, and so you get a taste of that sunshine. You don't want to leave, man. That's kind of what it boiled down to for him. So he kind of made that decision then and there. He wanted to just sleep on it and talk to his family and whatnot. But I think his mind was pretty much made up at that point on the plane ride back, saying like, we got unfinished business. And it's kind of when he told players, a couple of days later when he had finally reached that decision. So yeah, he's back for another year, and the Lions are sure happy to have him.
Yeah, this one isn't this decision is really interesting, and I love it a lot, and I know a lot of other people do. But it's also one that's not for everybody, like it's not one that I don't think we could say, like for instance, when the Lions hired Campbell, I remember saying to Chris, I was like, man, I hope this is a trend, the good guy hire. And it kind of, we've seen some of that, right? It's like, that's a trend. Yep. That became a trend. People are trying to copy some of what Dan Campbell did. I'm not sure if this will be a trend, not just because I don't know if Ben Johnson will be good enough to back it up. I think, for all we know, he will be. He'll be fine. But like everybody's in their own situation in life. Everybody has their own goal. Everybody has their own, like Aaron Glenn wants to be a head coach. Very vocal about that. Like at this point in his life, after having played the NFL for, 15 years, whatever it was, having been a scout, a coach, an assistant, all this, he wants to be a head coach. That's where he's at in his life. That's his priority. And there's really nothing wrong with that at all. For a guy like Ben Johnson, when you look at his context, it's so different than not just Aaron Glenn, but a lot of other guys. And his football context, even. He was at Carolina. He was a backup quarterback who was a math student who wasn't going to do football, but just like kept, hanging around, was so smart. They were like, you should try coaching. Okay, I'll try coaching. And then, like you say, Colton, he gets into the NFL. Then you realize that the thing that everybody realizes is that like 90% of the time that you're in the NFL, you're losing and you suck. And the team that you're on isn't good, going nowhere. And it's like, if you've never won and never done anything and never been anywhere really, right? Like, and you know that you're going to go have to start over again. That's a tough thing. That's a really tough thing. How many coaches have we seen over the years, particularly in college, I would argue, do that? They jump because they're like, I have to. I don't have a choice. I got to do it. And then it's just a disaster. It's a
Yeah.
disaster. You look back 3 years, you're like, he should have turned it down and stayed there and wrote it out. It would have been way better, right?
Yeah.
Like, and people are afraid to do that. And like I said, it's not for everybody, but I think it's amazing that a guy has the self-confidence, whatever, he's honest with himself and what he wants to do that. And that's awesome, the whole thing, whether it works out or not. Frankly, I think that that's awesome that he was able to make that decision twice, especially this time when the pressure really was on him here.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing too is like he realizes he has some leverage here. You know, like I think a lot of hotshot coordinators think they have to take the first job that comes their way, and Johnson isn't really thinking that way. Like when he does eventually take a head coaching job, and I believe he will, he wants it to be the perfect situation. One thing he mentioned on Thursday was just sort of the, looking around the landscape. Okay, there are 8 head coaching opportunities this offseason.
Right.
8 different coaches were hired. He said, how many of those guys will still have a job a few years from now? He set the over-under at like 3.5, 4.5.
Yeah, okay.
He's like probably 3 guys will still have head coaching jobs.
Let's just be real.
From that team, like 3 years from now.
Right.
So he's trying to set himself up to get that second contract. What Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes just got this offseason, right? Mm-hmm. And what's the best scenario for that? It's a good relationship with ownership. Your front office has to be aligned with what you're looking for. He wants to be a play caller still, so you have to have an organization that's willing to have a head coach and have that relationship as well. And he just didn't see that on the market this offseason, at least like with the opportunities that were available. So like, why force it with a franchise that you're not totally sold on, that you don't think can get you that second contract based on where things are, and that you'll be out of a job in 3 years, right? So he's thinking long term, and I have to give him credit for that, because not a lot of coordinators will do that. So many coaches are all about climbing the ladder. What's next? How can I advance my career? And Ben Johnson's thinking differently. He's like, my family loves it here. We have a chance to win in a city that hasn't won. And I like my job. I like my boss, right? That's the other factor here. Dan Campbell is a guy that people want to work for. That's not always the case elsewhere. So, he's got everything he needs in Detroit, he feels like, to help this team win. And like, if there's not a perfect situation elsewhere, he's not going to leave. He's going to stay in the sunshine a little bit longer.
I will also say this, having talked to 1,000 offensive coordinators in my life, if you're a play caller who is not out of his play caller phase yet, we'll say, you should not leave, because a head coach and an offensive coordinator, those people do very different jobs. It is not the same thing. It's not even close. I remember, there's so many over the years guys that had chances to be coordinators and just didn't do it because they were like, I don't want to do it. I'll just be an offensive coordinator for 100 places, whatever, be a vagabond, and I want to call plays forever. I'm not saying that's what Ben Johnson wants to do, but the headspace is incredibly different. Like, you're so focused on the puzzle and pieces of the game as a play caller, and really all the other stuff that a head coach literally has to do to keep his job, all the personnel things, all the emotional decisions, all the little things that really are what make a team go. You don't have to do any of that. It's like being a college coach and not having to recruit. It's like, I don't have to do any of this shit. I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. When my quarterback's mad, he can come to me and vent. He's not mad at me. He comes to me and vents. Like, this is a pretty good situation. Plus, like you said, we're winning, and I am looked at as a huge part of that. I have leverage. They're paying me probably like top. He's probably one of, if not the highest paid offensive coordinator in the NFL right now, I would imagine, right? Like, sometimes guys make this way too difficult, and they jump before they're ready, because they think that if I don't, because this is a football mentality, if I don't attack this thing like I'm the man, then who the hell am I anyway? And that's bullshit. That's not any way to attack anything. That's so old and dumb. Focus on where you're at, what you think you are and are not capable of in the current moment, and be okay with that. And I feel like that's what happened here. Long and short of it, I feel like if in an honest moment, Ben Johnson probably tell you, I don't know if I was ready to do that too, and I don't know if he was. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's fine for everybody involved there. You know what I mean? Saves everyone.
Yeah, for sure. I think the self-awareness in Ben Johnson is
off the charts.
Off the charts, right? Mm-hmm. Like, this is a guy that realized he had a good situation and was not going to leave for something that he doesn't think will be just as good in a couple of years from now, right? So like, you have to tip your hat to that. I mean, like I respect it a ton. That's just me personally. Like a lot of guys in his position would take that job. And you might get fired 3 years from now and you're just back to square one and wondering where you can work. Right. So,
yeah,
I think it worked out for him. I do think he'll be a head coach one day. And maybe this extra year will help him. Right. Like the thing with Ben Johnson that we know is he's this brilliant offensive mind. There have been so many guys labeled as the next big OC, the brilliant offensive mind, the next great head coach, right? But they have fizzled out after a few years because they didn't know how to lead a group of men. And now you get to continue learning from one of the best leaders of men in the NFL for another year.
Exactly.
Maybe go win a ring in the process. Like, not a bad gig,
Nope.
Like, that's good work.
I really think, and we get this asked. We've gotten asked this quite a bit since this all happened back in the winter. Like, is this going to hurt him with other owners in the league? And it depends on the owner. It will with some. I'm sure it will with some. But I don't think it will with everybody, because I think, like you just said though, Colton, I think the self-awareness factor is something that smart owners and smart people that make hires look for. And they say, well, okay, well, this guy we talk about all the time in football and everything else about being where your feet are. Well, this guy wanted nothing more than to just be where his feet were and then continue to do that and not get bothered or whatever, and have to leave. And it was just like, what's wrong with that? Even if it's against the grain a little bit. And that's really cool to see. That would not have happened 10 years ago. No chance. No chance. He would have been pressured. And like the media blitz that would have like pounded on him after that would have been out of hand. It would have been out of control.
It kind of already was out of control.
It was pretty rough.
But it would have been worse.
I think it would have been worse. It would have been worse.
Yeah.
We'd have been like, what's this guy's problem? What does he have a personal issue? Does he have a private life? It would have been a mess. Yeah. Everyone would have just been like, how it's unfathomable, right, that someone could do this. And that's what Washington sort of reacted like, how dare you turn us down, which is whatever. But anyway, everyone moving on, which is good stuff for Detroit, of course. Who else you guys talked to yesterday out there? I know Campbell talked to, didn't he?
Yeah, and then Scotty Montgomery.
That's right, Scotty as well.
Yeah. So Scotty's an interesting dude because I think he's also brilliant. Like, he's got that.
Yeah, he's he's got the leadership stuff, right? Yeah.
He really does. And I love talking to Scotty whenever we get him. And he's got the assistant head coach label, and I think he deserves it, more than anyone on the staff, just because of kind of how he carries himself, the way he communicates with his players. You see him with the running backs, and those guys respect him so much. And like, this is a guy he's had every job in this profession, whether it's
every job, man. That's exactly right. Yep.
Whether it's college or the NFL, he's been a wide receivers coach, a running backs coach, an offensive coordinator, a head coach,
QC. I think he's been
OC,
control, all that.
Yep, QC. Yep. So like, he's had every title that you can have. And he actually went through the NFL's accelerator program, which is, this program for, minority coaches looking to kind of advance their careers. He went to that. I believe it was in Nashville earlier this month. So he's another guy that, we're talking Ben Johnson. If Ben Johnson were to leave, maybe next offseason, I think you could see Scotty get the bump up to OC, just because I think they respect him that much. And he'll have, by then he would have had a couple years learning from Ben Johnson about, how to run that offense and keep things in tune. I think at that point, it might just be kind of a well-oiled machine if Ben leaves. So Scotty's impressive as hell, man. Like, I always love listening to him talk.
He was the obvious, if Johnson had left, he was the obvious choice. I think for most people, that was going to be the guy that took it probably this year, right? I think most people would agree.
Him or Tanner, but I think Scotty probably elevated himself.
Yeah, because Tanner started interviewing elsewhere. I almost wondered if that maybe there was writing on the wall there that it was. I don't know. I don't want to read too much into it, but Scotty Montgomery has called plays before. Like, he's done all this stuff. Like, it's a thing he can do. That's like a part, but it's part of what he can do. And I think that's to a degree, in some ways, I almost feel like he's a better head coaching candidate right now than Ben Johnson. Because he's a guy that can get people to follow him. And I don't want to say this as a slight to Ben Johnson, because it's not. Ben Johnson is a better play caller and better one-on-one coach right now than he is a coach to a full room of people. Yep. Right? I think he would maybe even agree with that in an honest whatever. And I think Scotty Montgomery is a guy that can do all of that. Right? It's the leadership about the whole room. It's just another addition or another guy on the staff, and it's a reason why people want to work here, because these are good dudes. Another guy I wanted to touch on here, that you wrote about a little bit was Hendon Hooker. I saw a little bit of him that first week that he was out there, and with the rookies as well. And he's getting a lot of reps, obviously, as you know, they're not going to overdo it with Goff. I'm curious. What were your thoughts? You saw him now twice. What have your thoughts been on Hendon here through about a month of him being healthy?
Yeah, the first time we were out there, I wasn't really focusing on him a ton, but I definitely made sure to watch him more on Thursday's second practice. And like he had an up and down day. I'll say that. Like I think it's okay to say that, right? Like we don't have
for sure.
We can talk about how things are. I thought his ball placement was kind of all over the place. You watch Jared Goff do a drill, and he's hitting a running back or a fullback or tight end, kind of low and away where you want it to be on an out route like that. Hendon's ball placement was kind of high or in the dirt sometimes. Right. It's kind of like, I think he's still shaking off some rust here, which is to be expected. He's had that ACL injury. He didn't really get a lot of time to, work with the team last year. Even when he did come back, it was kind of just like more mental, some reps here and drills. But, I think this is a really important time for him. So they got to get him right now. And, even in some team stuff, even on routine kind of short passes, quick passes to the sideline, he'd either hit him high, intermediate stuff. He was bouncing the ball. So it's like you would have liked to see more consistency. And I think that's kind of what the Lions are working on him with. Dan Campbell, when he was asked about Hendon on Thursday, kind of mentioned that I believe Wednesday's practice was his best day, and they're trying to work on, just stacking good days. So it seems like it's been kind of up and down. That's just kind of my read from what he was saying. Some of that's to be expected. He's in his second year. He's still working his way back. But then all that said, in between some of those like errant throws, you see just the most beautiful ball, like dropped in a bucket, like 30 yards downfield. And you're like, so yeah, that's the vision. Like if you can get that, the little things, the footwork, some of the mechanic stuff, if you can hone that in, I think the accuracy will return. Like, I don't think that's really an issue, like long term. It's just some jitter stuff right now, in my opinion. But yeah, the flashes are there, and you see the potential. You're just like, wow, he just hit JMO like 50 yards downfield on a rope, or wow, he just layered that over the linebacker perfectly. So you see throws like that, and that reminds you like this kid's got some talent.
A lot of it is just like first year rookie type stuff, which he is more or less at this point.
Yeah.
Because my observation the first couple of times we saw him, or the first time I saw him, I should say, which is what we see a lot with rookies. He was better when he was with like the third and fourth stringers, and he was tight and all over the place when he was with the starters. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it did not look as easy as it should have when he was with the dudes, because I think he was pressing and nervous and freaking out a little bit. And when he was with the guys that were just regular dudes who nobody knows who the hell they are, when he was with Tom Kennedy, like they were dealing, you know what I mean? And it wasn't who they're playing against. That's because they, as you know, they shift and rotate. Sometimes it's the ones versus the fours. On the other side, it's whatever. But when he was with guys that there wasn't as much pressure or there wasn't as much whatever, I felt like he was more comfortable and more consistent. And then to your point, when I saw him out there with some of the older dudes, it was like, oh yeah, he's getting a little, now he's freaking out a little bit. Now he looks more like a rookie. So yeah, I can see some of that. And I can, like, the part about when you compare him to Goff, that's the other thing too here. Like, he's playing and standing next to one of the most accurate passers in the NFL. So
yeah.
like,
yes.
when Jared throws an out route, it's probably exactly how it's supposed to be thrown.
Yeah.
So if Hooker comes right up after him and throws it a little bit off, it's like, no, man, it might have been off by an inch, but that looks like shit compared to what Jared just did. So that's also a big part of what's happening there too.
Yeah.
But I think the best point to make about him is that this is an amazing opportunity, time frame, whatever, because I think he's getting a lot of reps, like a lot. Goff's playing and doing stuff, but it does seem to be mostly Hooker, and they don't have they're not messing around with any of the other dudes. Like, I don't even know if they have any of these other dudes out here. Did they have Theo Day and the other guys out there at all?
No, it's just Nate Sudfeld.
Yeah, just Sudfeld. So they're not even really messing around with anybody else a lot. Hooker's getting a ton of work, at least the times we've been out there, right? I mean, I think it's a good time for him right now.
No doubt. And like those reps are going to help him more than anything. Like right now, I think that's important to note here. To me, it almost looks like he is like calculating what's supposed to happen on each play in his head in real time, instead of just letting it rip. And like, look, man, you know the stuff. You've been taking mental reps for a year now. I know you're excited to get out here and show what you can do, but at the same time, let the game come to you. And it seems like he's overthinking a little bit when he's out there. And he's like, okay, got an out right here. Linebackers are here. Okay, throw the ball. And like that's what's going through his head to me from what it looks like from afar. And then when he does that, he's throwing high or it's in front of his receiver when it should have been like on his hip, stuff like that. So it's like, all right, I think it'll calm down. I think it'll slow with due time. He's just got to stop overthinking out there. And that was kind of my read from it. And that comes with those reps, right? That's why those reps are important.
It's the first down passing, right? Where it's like, we're not rushed. The defense isn't rushed. They're set. They know what, they have a pretty good idea of what we're doing. Like it's not, it's that sort of stuff that a young quarterback has to be able to function without freaking out, because that's the other thing I would say is he's looked fine in like the 2-minute situations or the hurry up, whatever, when it's just get up there, quick read, get the ball out and go, whatever it is. But yeah, like when you get stuck in 7-7 and have to scramble, it's like, no, that's not, we're not trying to scramble in 7-on-7. That ball needs to come out, right? And it's like when it's first down passing and the situation is a lot less like, hurry up, let's go, let's try to just make reads and play quick like a college offense. Yeah, you're going to have some of those where it's like he just made that throw a minute ago, but now it looks like it's in the dirt and like it'll even out. And I feel like I do feel like it'll even out with him in the long haul. But that's one to keep circled. Another guy that I wanted to touch on before we get out of here today, short episode here in the summer, was Broderick Martin, who's been talked about a bit here based on how he changed his body anyway. He's lost a lot of the fat, baby fat, whatever it would be, or I guess, and rocked himself up. But he was always huge, and now he's even bigger. I guess, I don't know. To me, he doesn't look bigger because I was like, this guy was always like a mountain of a man. It's hard for me to say that he's bigger, but I can definitely say that he's more defined for sure. You can tell that he's changed his body and added strength. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, no doubt. He's just such a physically imposing dude.
Huge guy. Like
you could see that last year, right? Like even when he's going up against Frank in training
camp. First guy off the bus. Yeah.
He's just a menace out there. And so like you talk about that guy shedding weight and like, cutting up and kind of get his body right. That's they're in shorts right now, so you can't really, judge the physical aspect, but just looking the part, he absolutely does. And that's something Aaron Glenn talked about. He said he's transformed his body into an NFL defensive lineman.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the case last year. Some of the stuff was like, okay, we got to get you in shape. Your pad level's a little high. You got to work on hand technique. Those were like the three aspects that he needed to work on last year that the coaches were telling us. So he's got his body right. I think he said he hired a chef to help him. It was kind of,
nice.
On that Aleem McNeil plan. He saw how he got his body right last year. I think was maybe picking his brain a little bit. And I mean, I think Broderick, that story is a perfect, example of the Lions culture at work, because you want to get these guys that set the tone, right? These hard workers that are just going to do things on their own to improve their own game. And then you bring these young players to fall in behind them, and they have no choice but to look at the leaders ahead of them and say, he did that. He had a Pro Bowl caliber season. I need to do the same thing. And that's just kind of how it operates from top on down. You see St. Brown, you see David Montgomery now, you see like all these guys across the board, Alex Anzalone, how he prepares, and the example he sets for those younger guys. You look across the board at every position, they've got those leaders now. And so the young guys that they're bringing in, these first and second year players, have no choice but to react to the veterans ahead of them and what they're doing to, star on this NFC Championship caliber team, a Super Bowl caliber roster. And so I think that's what Broderick is at right now. He's looking around and saying, man, Aleem just had a great season. We got TJ Reader in here now. Like he's a vet.
Yeah, I gotta go.
Be my guy. It's time for me to turn up my game. And like, I think that's what's happening this offseason. Like, I don't know if it'll lead to immediate success, but those are the little things that you can point to right now to where if it does happen, you can say, okay, that started this year. That light switched this offseason. I think that's where he's at right now.
Yeah, everything in football is so much easier when like you're not, when you have examples to look at, you know what I mean? When you're not just flying blind. And the special players do not come around all the time. And I think that it's important for people to know that the Lions got two of them in back-to-back years in Sewell and Hutchinson. rookies do not come into the NFL and do what those guys did in any position. They just don't. Think about any position, right? It's very rare. A handful every year we see, right? They come in and are just dudes right out of college. Like we know them when we see them, usually in college. Guys like us, we watch a lot of them. But, they're so the number is on one hand every year of guys that are going to come in and just be right off the bus, ready to go. Here we are. I'm going to be a 17 game dude for you all the way. It's just not a thing that happens. So to have examples that aren't rookies, that are other guys who've had to go through it and learn and have their bumps, is an amazing thing on an NFL team. And I think that it's a really unique situation because Martin is one of these guys that they've taken a chance on in the mid rounds that they drafted ahead of where a lot of other people probably had them.
Yeah.
And it's like the ability, and I think that part of the reason, obviously, that they took him is they like their character, they like their work ethic, and it's like you automatically have a guy with a chip on his shoulder, right? You bring a guy in, and he's automatically an underdog. He's automatically like, nobody thinks you're any good. Let's see if you can do this, and it's worked out more than it hasn't. And I that's another one that we had circled before the year where it was like, Sorsdahl, him, a couple other guys where don't be surprised if they take a jump or a leap here because they're bringing in dudes who like to be challenged. And I think that's another one. We've seen that already a little bit from Broderick, who 1 year in automatically changes everything about himself. And that, you know what I mean? That doesn't happen in other places. Not often, anyway. So that's another one. Really good stuff.
Yeah. And, I think he was probably challenged a little bit, to get right. And
I'm sure.
Some players might take offense to that. And it seems like he just kind of took it head on and said, bet, let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's really cool to see. And another thing I'll add about Broderick, he mentioned like how great DJ Reader has been for him already. Which is just, I thought that was a perfect fit when they signed him just because of what he can do for Aleem in the lineup and also Aiden Hutchinson. But also, those are some of the after effects, right? Like you don't really think immediately like, oh, how is he going to help Broderick Martin? But like that's something that he took upon himself.
Right.
And it is a long-term thing, right? So, Broderick said one of the first things that he talked to DJ about was like his own film. DJ had already watched Broderick's film, like in college and whatnot, and said, "This is what you need to do to improve your game. This is what I see. I think you can be this good." So and so. How cool is that, man? Like, how cool is that? I don't think
that's Lions football, man. That's Lions football. And DJ Reader is the latest example, but he's not the only one. We just said it. No. Every person they bring in here, they are not doing it unless they have culture ed. I was out there last week talking to somebody out there. We were talking about Teddy Bridgewater, right? About how he's coaching now, and he's running reps with the freaking. He's like the scout team quarterback while he's calling plays or whatever. It looks pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But like his impact last year, not just on Jared and all the other dudes, like on the offense, like what he helped Jameson Williams with is what you're seeing right now, right? The payoff with all the guys that you bring in, the veterans. It's like, don't be shocked if DJ Reader doesn't help like a young linebacker or a young corner or somebody else too. You know what I'm saying? Because like that's when they bring veterans in, that's what they're doing. They're bringing guys in. It's like, let's help everybody along. So that's another really good stuff from him too, because that just reminded me of some other examples, and it's on and on it goes. Lions have got a really good thing going right now. It's hard to argue with that.
It really is across the board too, because even you talk to Carlton Davis, and he's talking about, I think one of the corners, maybe Ennis, was born in like 2002, 2003. And he's like, I was active in 2003. Like I remember, I was conscious. Like,
I was conscious. Yeah. I was sentient or whatever.
Yeah. So here's stuff like that, but he's like, I'm excited to like, work with these rookies. I'm trying to make them better. Like they're gonna push me because I got to get my stuff together, right? And it's like he's even talking about JMO, saying like Jameis potential is through the roof. Like he's making me better. I can make him better. Like that's my goal, is to make Jameson Williams into a great receiver in this league. So all these guys they brought in this offseason, I'm sure Kevin Zeitler, we haven't talked to him much, but I'm sure he's the same way with some of these young offensive linemen they brought in. And we already know Panay's an example, and Graham and some of these other guys. So you look around each position, you got solid veterans that are just good dudes that aren't like challenged by these young players, right?
Oh,
like,
there's
none of that.
Great point. That's really a big deal too.
And that's I think what makes this different. Like some teams will have these veterans, and that's part of why they spend so much time on this evaluation process, because they want guys that are going to want to bring on the next generation and not feel threatened by them.
Right.
And so some teams have those dudes that's like, oh, you're bringing a rookie to compete with me? Like, no, get out of here.
Yeah, right. What do you think this is?
Yeah, like, take my job. Get out of here. Don't talk to me.
Yeah,
get out of my face. Go get my coffee, Rook.
Yeah,
It's not, no, none of that. So I think that's cool.
Hey.
Like, no assholes. That's kind of the motto here. So
right. Pretty simple. Good stuff. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there. That's a good spot to wrap up this week. We've got mini camp coming up here. We said next week for mini camp, right? So then we'll get another episode in here. We'll see what happens from there. But that'll do it for today. Be sure to check us out and subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already. Send us in a new name for the show. We'll be getting to that maybe around the time camp comes. But in the meantime, be good to each other. Enjoy the weather. Colton, I'm Nick. Talk to you guys later.